Hey, everybody, and welcome to your next. I'm your host, Jerome. I've got Phil Calandra with me today. Brother, are you in Atlanta? Where are you? Because I flew
Yeah,
through there
yeah,
this morning.
you got it, Jerome. I'm in Atlanta. We travel between Atlanta and Florida, but yeah, in Georgia today.
Phil is one of those people who has done a ton. It's probably going to be a little understated. And so I'll try to pull it out of him because I imagine he's not going to tell the whole thing, but I'll get it out of him before the end of the episode. Um, I love to start these shows, Phil, with so you had an exit.
Two exits.
Ooh. Double decker. Two exits from the same company or separate companies?
Two of our companies, the suitor was the same company.
Ooh, that's always good. If it gets done once and it gets done well the first time, then you're always interested in going back for a second bite of the apple, huh?
You got that right. Yeah.
So most people don't even know you can sell a business. You figured out you could sell two. Can we talk about the journey to getting the first one done? Because I think we learned so much on that first journey.
Yeah, for sure. Well, so a little bit of backstory. I was on an airplane September the 11th, 2001. Everybody that was walking around the earth in business that day always remembers where they were. I was on an airplane flying from Atlanta to Tallahassee, Florida. I had a presentation at Florida State University. I get off the plane, and obviously, the world changed that day. The presentation was canceled, and I sat in a Courtyard Marriott in Tallahassee, Florida, at the edge of the bed, watching these buildings crumble to the ground. And I had two young boys at home, twins that were 1 year old. And I was the typical road warrior. I was out on Monday morning and back on Friday evening. And I thought that's the hustle that you needed. Well, I drove home from Florida and I said, nah, I'm not going to keep down this path. So I had the idea to go into financial services more on the personal side than the corporate side, which is what I was doing. So I started an insurance brokerage in 2002, 2003, and just started hustling, selling life insurance, disability insurance, annuities. And you know what, Jerome? It turned out pretty darn well. I was good at it. And I built that business and then transitioned a few years later before the financial crisis into investment advisory. So then rewind, or I should say fast forward all the way to 2021, I was approached to sell the investment advisory practice. At that point, we had about $250 million under management, and I still had the insurance brokerage, which was more of a commission-based business. The enterprise value for a one-time transaction, as you know, it's not as rich. The multiples just weren't there. And my suitor didn't want the insurance brokerage. They said, no, we're only interested in the investment advisory. I said, off the table. That's not the deal. You have to take both. So after months of back and forth and you know the game, the due diligence, I had the books, they were pristine. I'm a financial advisor, for gosh sakes. I had everything dialed in and we couldn't get the deal done because they didn't want the lower enterprise value type of business. They wanted the investment advisory, much richer multiples. So we ended at the end of the day, we got it worked out. So both of those businesses were packaged as a single sale to the firm that acquired us. I stayed on, as many people do. I had a non-compete and a non-solicit. So I said, sure, I'm a partner in this firm now. It's a $10 billion firm. So I stayed on and everything was great until it wasn't. And I know you recognize this. I was not happy. I had spent my, 20 years building and digging and scratching and I just wasn't having fun. So about 2024, my wife and I decided that we'd start over. So we've started a third firm now, specializing in kind of holistic financial advisory and business coaching, business consulting for entrepreneurs, business owners and founders that are in the million to $10 million range. What we discovered is that's a very underserved market from a business consulting, CFO strategy, financial strategy. So yeah, that's the long story. That's kind of how it went down.
Didn't sound very long to me, and you covered over 20 years.
There's a lot of ups and downs between there if you want to pull those out.
Yeah, well, so did you get an unsolicited offer? Did you whisper that you were ready to go to market? Like, how did
Totally,
this?
totally unsolicited. I was fortunate enough to have a radio show here in Atlanta for 9 years, parlayed that into a TV show on Georgia Public Broadcasting, and the firm unsolicited, they wanted to open an office in Atlanta, and their MO was using private equity to acquire firms. And they actually listened to radio shows and TV clips, and they said, yeah, we really like your philosophy. You've built an amazing business. And at that point, it was me, my wife in the business. She ran the ops. We had three other teammates, came out of COVID unscathed. And yeah, that's the phone rang. And initially, I was like, I'm not down for this. I said, we're doing just fine. We got a good thing going. And then the phone rang a second time and then a third time. And then eventually I said, I got to take the call. I got to sit down at the table, and the rest is history, as they say.
So, how'd you know that it was a good offer?
That's a great question. I did a lot of research. I tried to find, comparable sized firms, people in the financial services industry. It's a pretty tight knit group. I know a lot of other professional services industry groups are pretty tight knit. So I was able to call around and find out, what valuations looked like, what multiples were in our size space. I didn't use an investment banker. I didn't feel like I needed to incur that expense. And then it was really by design. I wanted to make sure that the liquidity event was um, life altering. Obviously, it always is. We became work optional that day. It was substantial enough that my family is going to be very well taken care of. If we don't want to work, we don't have to work. That's why we call it work optional. I wrote about that in my book, The Wealth Creation Method. For so many years, everybody in financial services is talking about retirement and retirement planning. And as an entrepreneur, I always kind of looked at that and said, damn, that's kind of silly. I don't want to retire. I want to keep going. I like creating and building, and I like the hustle. And when we had the event, I, kind of looked at it in a different perspective. So I feel like it was a really good run, and now we're going to do it again.
So, what was the shift in perspective when you had your liquidity event?
Well, there's a deeper story. So in 2020, during COVID, I actually had a heart attack.
Oh no.
I was 51 at the time, or about to be 51. And, when you have something like that, especially at that age, it changed my perspective, what's really important.
Mhm.
Taking some of the risk off the table, as they say, and kind of buttoning down the family the family generational wealth component. I think that's what kind of shifted in the back of my mind when I went through the negotiation. I felt like, these are good people. I'm still a partner in the firm, and they're amazing people. The CEO is a very good friend. My partners could not have been better. So I felt like it was a really good match. But at the same time, it maybe took some of the chips off the table, some of the stress, some of the uncertainty of, how's this going to work out? Unfortunately, the statistics aren't really good for most businesses. A lot of businesses can't be sold, and people are flying down the highway of life thinking that their retirement, air quotes, I hate the word retirement, they're thinking that their wealth is their business. And then they get to the other side of that and they realize that, oh shit, I don't have my financials in order. It's really a mess. There isn't anybody that wants to buy it. It's really the founder driven business instead of a business that works without the hustle of the founder, all of the things. So for me, it was like a natural way for me to put us in a better position, and I didn't have to quit. I just go in a different direction, and that's what we did.
So your earnout was 2 years?
The earnout was 2 years. The non-compete was 5.
Okay. So what I typically find is people get at odds, don't want to be an employee about 6 months in. How did you manage 2 years?
Well, I was actually 5 years. So, because of the non-compete, it really wasn't difficult because, like I said, the people that I work with, and I still work with them because I'm still a partner, they're great people and they're doing really solid work in the investment advisory realm. So that really wasn't an issue for me. What it was that I didn't want to look back 5 years, 10 years from now and think that I had something left to give and some other way to make an impact. It's just like being on the ball field, right? The coach would always say, just don't leave it on the field. Give it all you got during the game. And when the clock's zero, then you played the game well. And that's the way I looked at it because I over the last, I don't know, 10, 15 years, more and more of our clients were business owners, founders in that million to 10 million, $12 million range. And the statistics are so horrible. In the United States, 20% of businesses don't make it 2 years. 50% of businesses don't make it 5 years. So I kind of looked at it and said, well, if I could make a bigger impact and help these business founders, if I could just save one or 10 or 100 businesses from going under, I kind of felt like that would be, a better use of my skill set and the experience that I had. And the other question I always ask myself is, what would I do if I couldn't fail?
Mm.
Because I can't fail. If I don't stop, I won't fail. And it's not a financial thing, right? I had the event. I had I had the blessing. So I can work in a pursuit that's not totally tied to, I got to pay the mortgage. At that time, my sons were still in college. I got to, I don't have to worry about that. That's the blessing behind your next.
You didn't find a pain like if it's sometimes guys talk about the simplest stuff like requesting time off or doing expense reports. You didn't you didn't begrudge that. That was okay for you.
It was okay. Did I like doing the expense report or, reporting in? No, but I think in our scenario, in our world, I did have the capacity to keep working with my clients, to keep building. I mean, I won't lie. There were some shifts. Obviously, that's what happens when you give up the reins and the control. So, yeah, there were things that I didn't agree with, but the firm was really good to me. They let me build the business inside the business, and now they've given me the opportunity to kind of expand my wings and still, make the impact that I think we can make.
That's beautiful. Um, I love to hear a great story. You mentioned you had the liquidity event, you took the chips off the table after the health event. How long did the high last from seeing the number in the account?
I mean, it was pretty high. It was pretty high, dude. Because the payout, the earnout was 2, the deal payments were, I was able to stretch that out. I did get equity in the new firm, and that's still good. That's still good. So I think the initial rush does wear off. I think you're right. Probably 6 months in, a year, you're kind of looking at it and you say, wow, this was quite something. But then you kind of come back down to earth. And that's where I kind of framed it. And I said, what's this going to look like 5 years, 10 years, 15 years from now? Because I wasn't ready to kind of go out to pasture, which happens a lot when you have an exit event. Um, I was
Yeah.
young enough to say, hey, and I love what I do. I love to work. I retirement just didn't appeal to me. I was like, I hate fishing and I suck at golf. So maybe pickleball. I don't know, but I like to do what I do. I like being on the podcast with you. I wrote the book. It took me 25 years of lessons and about 16 months to write it down in the form of a book. And so there's always things that I can find to get me excited and occupy time. That's the way I look at it.
So, did you have much of a plan other than I'm gonna go work for the acquirer post exit?
No, I thought that that would probably be the last run. I thought that I probably could ride it all the way out to the end. And then, probably 2 years, 3 years in, just through a series of meetings with other entrepreneurs and other people, I kind of had this kind of deep feeling that there was something extra. And True Wealth Advisors was kind of the brainstorming of other entrepreneurs, founders that are doing well, their revenue is up, but their wealth just isn't keeping pace. And that's the problem because most business owners or founders find themselves in a very financially difficult and chaotic space, unlike those that are employees. So, what we determined is for a business owner, at a particular level of revenue, typically a million, maybe it's 2 million, you all of a sudden have a bookkeeper, you have a CPA, you have a financial advisor, you have a business coach or mentor, you have a fractional CFO, you have all these people working in what we call a specialist model. The specialist isn't wrong, but there isn't anybody that's coordinating the entire financial ecosystem. So think about it this way. If you went in Greensboro, you went to Symphony Hall tonight and you walked in and they started playing and the string section had one sheet music, the percussion had another, the brass section was playing another, and there was no conductor standing up front with the baton, that would be a pretty dismal sounding orchestra, right? And that's what we do as the business owner. So the bottleneck becomes the CEO. They think that the CPA is handling this, or they think the fractional CFO is guiding them, and it's all fragmented. We call it the coordination gap. And if you can't coordinate all the financial structure within a small business, as the business grows, what happens?
Compounds.
Compounds. It gets worse and worse and worse.
Mm.
So you're driving revenue and you're getting further and further behind. And then if you don't have the exit, where's the wealth?
It's
And
trapped in the business.
I've
Yeah.
seen that. It's all trapped. We call it the revenue trap. And we call that being a treadmill entrepreneur. You just keep spinning and spinning and spinning. And the worst question you can ask is, I'll make it all when I sell. And then what
That's a
happens?
bold assumption.
You build a brand, you build a business, and then according to the Exit Planning Institute, only 11% of businesses sold in the United States ever clear what the founder thought they were going to get out of the business. So if your whole wealth strategy is your business and your identity is tied to it, tough road, dude. And that's why we created what we created, to help people develop a structure and a system that allows them focus on the exit. Absolutely. But extract money, extract the profit out of your business. Don't trap it in revenue, build it into real wealth. And that's what nobody's teaching. That's what Wall Street is not teaching. Most CPAs are filing returns. Most CPAs work for the IRS. You just pay them. Most fractional CFOs are really good at providing financial leadership in the business, but it contradicts what you need to be doing for your family to build the wealth. And so
What's an
that's the
example of
structure.
that? Come on. What's an example of that? You just cut them deep. You said the CPA works for the IRS,
Yeah.
but you pay them. You
Yeah.
said the CFO is getting you
So
to do
here's an
things that aren't good
example.
for your family.
Here's an example. The CPA, the accountant comes to Jerome and says, you need to start a SEP IRA, right? You've heard of a
Yeah.
SEP IRA.
Yeah, I need to
If,
get my taxes down.
so if you do a SEP IRA, you want to have the most amount of profit in the business you can because the SEP's percentages are driven by the revenue of the company. So
Uh-huh.
you're going to pay more tax just to get a contribution into the SEP IRA. So the financial advisor and the CPA are not on the same sheet of music. If you have a CFO that's giving you guidance in the business math and they're developing a forecast, a budget, a cash flow forecast, but you want to go on a vacation, you're the founder, you want to extract money. You're at odds now. Your personal finances are at odds with the way that the CFO is potentially directing you. Same thing with the bookkeeper. The bookkeeper is recording transactions looking in the rear view mirror. It already happened. If you're not in tune month after month after month with the way that the books are being tracked and kept, does the bookkeeper know how to prep you for exit? Probably not.
That's not their
So
game. That's not their.
I just gave you three coordination gaps that we see over and over and over. And it's not that the specialist model is wrong. It's just what we've accepted. So we find all these different advice givers, and when you turn around after all the advice has been given, you look at it and say, I guess it's right, but does it really propel you to where you want to go? And I don't know about you, but all the years that I was building my businesses, it wasn't about revenue. It was about what I could keep. So coordinating and removing the gap, it's like having a bucket that has holes in it. If you pour water into a bucket that has holes in it, no matter how much money you pour in or water you pour in, you're not getting anywhere. So if we create a structural change and a plan that plugs the holes in the bucket, no matter how much water you pour in, it eventually overflows. That's a totally different mindset, and it's a whole different way of structuring the financial ecosystem for these. I don't want to say they're small. I mean, a $10 million venture is nice, but that million, 2 million, 5 million, $10 million owner, they're in a very precarious spot. It's not like I have clients that are 20, 30. I have a roofing company that's 80. They're probably going to sell to PE for about 4x. They're in a different, those types of exits and those types of enterprises don't feel the same pain as the small guy. And that's where we wanted to make the impact. How did we come to this realization? We were in a focus group, a mastermind, and I sat in front of the room and I said, here's my background, here's what we've done. I said, if you could open a financial advisory practice or you could be served by a financial strategist, what would it look like? Oh my God. 40 people in the room, 40 entrepreneurs, 8 figure, 9 figure businesses. And they all kept back, same thing. I don't know what this guy's doing. I don't know if this is right. I can't make a decision. I keep hearing about this. I need somebody to help me coordinate all of it. Someone that I can trust, someone that can look at the big picture, someone that can consult me like a business coach, someone that can consult me like a CPA. And I was like, yeah, that's the answer. That's exactly what I wanted in all the years that I was running firms.
And so you became that guy?
That's what we've built.
That's fascinating. So do you think the gap exists because there's a required skill set that's not taught but in one of the disciplines to oversee it? Because I see the same thing when people are exiting, right? Like
Mm.
for the founder who doesn't have somebody engaged on their team to quarterback, they become the quarterback for the transaction, and they're trying to figure out that we asked the tax person the right question. They're trying to figure out if we went through the personal planning the right way. Do the attorneys understand what's a business decision versus a legal decision, and so on and so on and so on. And then in addition to that, they still have to figure out how to remain true to what they said they wanted out of the deal
Yeah.
instead of just trying to get the deal done because they have deal fatigue. But like there's no school to go to or certification to get to become a quarterback for a transaction. So is that what you notice as it relates to kind of this financial strategist that is more than a CFO and
Yep.
definitely broader than a CPA?
Yes, 100%. Because what ends up happening is you have an area of expertise. But I guarantee you, if we sat down with any founders listening to us right now, because they have some experience, they have some business acumen, they know a little bit about a lot of things.
Yeah.
So our role, and we call this a chief wealth officer. That's a term that we've coined. The chief wealth officer, and the way that I structure it in our firm, and the way I train our advisors is we have competency in all of the areas, but we also vertically integrate with the CPA. With We don't have to replace all the teammates on the bench, the advice givers. It often happens that way. They'll say, "Hey, can we just use your in-house bookkeeper? Can we use your CPA? Can we all be in an alignment? Can we all be on the same page?" And that's the end goal. So what ends up happening is the discoordination, the gaps get closed rather quickly when what it is that you gotta look for. We've built a number of tools. We can put this in the show notes. One of the things that we start with every client is diagnose the holes in the bucket. So we created what we call the wealth creation scorecard. 15 questions, identifies three primary pillars or three primary areas where money can leak. It's the profitability of the business entity, it's the tax structure of the entity, and it's the wealth strategy of the owner. And simple tool, go through 15 questions, and it'll give you kind of exactly where you're probably weakest in those three pillars. The follow on to that is what we call the wealth gap analysis. That's a GPT that we created that will give you exactly, based on your revenue model, based on your business, how much the leak or the gap is actually costing you. So, the beginning of all transformation is knowledge of where the problem lies. And that's what we take all of our clients through. It starts with the wealth creation scorecard, identify the gaps, reveal them, and then understand what it's costing you. Plug those, pour more water in. Wealth is built. That's our model.
That's fascinating. So when you embed or integrate, what do the existing team like? Do the existing team members get really happy that Phil and team are coming in, or are they like,
Well, yeah, that gets a little contentious sometimes. I have
yeah.
a client right now out in San Diego, and I think that the accounting team is a little nervous
Uh-huh.
because I'm pointing out things that this business is probably 2.3 million in top line. And I can sense that the accountant,
Yeah.
she's a little nervous because I'm directing, I'm providing leadership. I don't mean to supplant her. I'm not trying to replace her. But if you got what's the saying? The team is only as strong as the weakest link.
Yeah.
So what does happen is we're guiding, we're educating, we're implementing the outcome, ascending to the outcome. If the team, if you got a bad quarterback, sometimes you got to bench him and bring in the number QB2. That's the facts.
So the person that would be looking for this service, one is like, hey, I want to build wealth. The first generation wealth creator, so they probably have a gap in skill set because they don't know how to do it because they haven't had an example for it. But then two, like, are they experiencing some type of pain? Like, do they say the business isn't profitable, or like, what's the primary
Yeah,
problem
I
they're
think
trying to solve?
that's very true, Drum. There's so many different pain points. For example, I'm making money, but then I got to turn around and pay a $200,000 check to the IRS. How, why? Well, have you gone through any real tax strategy? Not just prepping and filing, tax strategy. Are you using cash balance plan instead of a SEP IRA? Are you using the Augusta rule? Are your kids on the payroll? Are you taking advantage of the accountable plan, home office deduction? You know, proper setting of the salary versus distributions. I mean, those are some tax implications. On the CFO kind of advisory, the leadership side, um, when do I hire the next person on the team? Is it the right time from a cash flow perspective? Um, what is my revenue mix? Do I have a product or a line of service that's overemphasizing the revenue and not contributing to the equivalent profitability? You could go on and on. And then from the financial, advisory side, do I buy more Airbnb rental property or should I put it in Bitcoin? Should I buy a second home in the mountains or should I put it in the S&P 500, the Vanguard 500 that averages 10%? All these questions are going through the owner founder's mind. Whether they express them or articulate them is a different story. But I talk to people every day. They're waking up at 2 in the morning. They're like, oh, I'm going to have a tax bill. Should I go buy a second property and do a cost segregation study? I don't know. Let's put that on the table. But it's got to be orchestrated. Again, I love that analogy. It's got to be orchestrated with all the moving parts. And unfortunately, Wall Street's not built that way. The CPA is not built that way. The fractional CFO is really a phenomenon, really, over the last 5 years. It's not entrepreneur centric. You're getting a specialist view from a lane that they live in. And I'll pile on a little bit. They all have their own mortgage to pay. So if you go to a realtor, what's the most important investment in the world to someone that sells real estate?
The home.
It's real estate. If you
Yeah.
talk to a financial advisor, what's the best investment in the world? It's their
Market.
it's their
AUM.
mutual fund or their
Yeah.
the market. So you could go on and on and on like this. I just step away from that and said, I know in my own experience in my advising of clients over all these years, what they really need is a conductor that knows maybe not how to play all the interest instruments, but they know how to conduct and orchestrate it so that it sounds the way it's supposed to sound. That's the bottom line. Entrepreneur centric advice, I think, is very limited in my experience.
Say more about the definition for entrepreneur-centric advice, because I think you're going to beat a drum that I love.
Yeah. So, we have this. Let me back up. Most of the financial advice that we have learned, if you've learned it, came from our parents and grandparents. The deeper you go back in time with your knowledge base, they were coming out of the Industrial Revolution and World War II. Think about how much the world has changed from the Industrial Revolution to the Entrepreneurial Revolution. Daniel Priestley wrote an amazing book called The Entrepreneur Revolution. I highly recommend it. Get it on audio tape, plug it in. Daniel Priestley. So we've had this major shift over the last 70, 80 years. So everything that we've been acculturated about money, it's not taught in schools. It's not taught really unless you're in a circle of a family or a network or, exposure to money. So the information that we've been working off of is geared for the industrial working age, the
Mm.
industrial revolution. That
Hmm.
was go get a job or go get an education or learn a skill, go get a job with a W-2, make sure the W-2 covers all of your expenses, live below your means, put away into a 401k,
Hmm.
get to age 65, and
Yeah.
again, that's how the whole retirement industry became a thing.
Yeah.
If that sounds like putting a gun to your head, That's the way I felt. It's like, this does not make any sense to me. I don't want to work till I'm 65 or 67 and then retire. I wanted to build something that I could extract wealth from. Eventually, we exited that, which was even a bigger kind of juice there. But entrepreneur centric advice is looking at it not the way our parents and grandparents did, because it's a totally different world for a founder, for a business owner. Um, the advice is different. The structure is different. This model, this specialist model, this silo approach, I think it's going to go away. And the other thing is, look at how all these advice givers are paid. Why do you pay a realtor commission? You pay a stockbroker commission, a fiduciary advisor, a 1%, a fee.
Management fee. Yeah.
You pay a CPA by return. So again, all these people have their mortgage to pay. So we created this industry, this advice industry. I think that eventually the puck is moving towards more holistic, comprehensive, fee-based. Here's my retainer. You're going to pay me this every month. We'll coordinate the big picture. And oh, by the way, by plugging the holes in the bucket, like we talked about, pour the water in, here's what the resulting cost savings is going to be. When we work with clients, I'm free.
No.
Let me say it again. When I work with clients, I'm free, because what we're going to save them becomes a neutral, it's neutered, it's neutralized. For example, if you pay, $3,000, $4,000, $5,000 a month for advice, let's just say it's $50K a year. Do you think it's probable, because it's certainly possible, to save or bring back to you, the owner, $50,000? Absolutely, it is. When you work with somebody, if you had an investment banker that was going to guide somebody through an exit, why would I pay somebody to guide me through my exit a fee if I didn't think that the recapture would be greater than the fee? You would do that. So when we charge $4K a month, $48,000 a year seems like a lot of money. But then look at the numbers. The average client, or the average client in our 2025 cohort, saved between $60,000 and $150,000. So Jerome, would you write me a check for $48,000 today if I could save you? And I, can't guarantee it, but if I could save you 60 to 150K every year, would you want me on your team?
Absolutely.
Most people say
Profit center.
yes.
Yeah.
It's a profit center, not a cost center. Exactly.
So I might be oversimplifying this, but it almost feels like you're becoming the financial planner, advisor, wealth manager for the business instead of the individual.
But the business is the individual. That's the whole
Oh,
point. That's the
say it,
whole
Jared.
point.
Say it. Say more. Say more.
So right now, everybody is disconnecting the business from the owner's wealth,
Yeah.
and there's no bridge. That's the brilliance. Because think of it in flywheels. I think in three flywheels.
Okay.
You're a founder, you're a business owner. Your business is the fuel. That flywheel spins faster and faster. It gets bigger and bigger. Not revenue, profit. You drop more profit to the bottom line. What's the next flywheel that spins against you? Uncle Sam. The more
Yeah,
you
tax.
make, the more
Mm.
Uncle Sam wants to take. So if we can pour gas, that's the business consultant, that's the CFO, that's the coach. If I can help you build better businesses with more profit acceleration, then we've got to pay attention to that counter flywheel, which is tax. How do you keep more of what you make? So this is where all those component parts become so powerful. If you create more profit, the fuel is the business. You learn how to keep it through tax strategy, which is different than filing.
Yeah.
And after you've kept more, then it opens up the owner's wealth. But they're one and the same. That's the beauty of your question, is it's not and or, it's both,
There
because
we
the
go.
owner is it is all devised for wealth creation for the owner.
This is fascinating because I find wealth managers don't really want to be involved or embedded in the business, entrenched in the business. They just want to see what's coming to the personal side so they can manage that. And, whenever you have the liquidity event, they're interested in what comes from the liquidity event. But being involved in the thing that's creating the wealth, it's like, that's too much work. You got other people for that. And you're saying, no, no, we're going to put
The
this whole thing together for you.
the money, the payoff is coordinating the gap and bringing all three components. See, that's the problem. We think we buy into this silo, this specialist kind of segmentation.
Yeah.
That's why there are business coaches, CFOs, consultants to the business.
Uh-huh.
They're extracting their fee, they're making their living, they're paying their mortgage, focusing on a skill set that they have. Understood. That's why we have a CPA accounting function. Tax strategy is becoming more and more popular because people are tired of paying unnecessarily to Uncle Sam.
Right. Right.
So we said no, and this is what the book lines out. It's like, this is what I wanted over all of those years. I wanted somebody to give me one unified plan, orchestrated. Doesn't mean that you have to turn it all over to one person. I have clients that still keep their bookkeeper and their CPA. I have clients that have their own wealth manager, but coordinating them is the slipstream to get more for the owner. That's what makes it a profit center, not a cost center, as you said.
Wow. Man, so we've covered a ton of ground. Um, it all comes back to a point, but there might be something you want to highlight here as we wrap up. And so I love to ask the question, what's the one thing you want the listeners to take away from this episode?
The one thing, go take the wealth creation scorecard, learn where your gaps are. You've got
Yeah,
three pillars in your business. It's the business profitability, it's the tax that you're going to have to pay, and it's how much you extract out of your business. Pretend that you're not eligible for the exit. I hope that they are, and I know most of your listeners are gunning for that. But let's not depend on that yet. Because if you do all these things right and then they come to you or then they go for the exit, what happens? You want
valuation
my
goes up.
clients to be your clients, brother, because
Yeah,
they're going to be ready.
yeah,
Go take the wealth creation scorecard. The first solution to transformation and building a better outcome is identifying where is your error, where are you making the mistakes? And the expression I always use is, if what you thought to be true turned out not to be true,
yeah.
when would you want to know?
Now,
Go take the wealth creation scorecard. We'll put the link in the show notes. It's wealthcreationscorecard.com. That's step number one. Identify where the holes in your bucket are. Then take that, run, run to all your different advice givers and say, help me fix this, because there are going to be three people you're going to have to talk to. You're going to have to talk to the person that helps you manage your business. That's a coach, a CFO, consultant. You're going to have to take the same document to your tax planner, strategist, and the wealth manager. Give it to them and say, hey, what do you think? How do I shore these up? And then how do I tie them all back together? And they're not going to have an answer for you. Then you give them then you call me and I'll show you, because the next follow-on exercise, identify where the gaps are, but then if we can show you how much it's costing you, that's little red arrow, you are here. You're
yeah,
trying to get here. I'm trying to go from, Atlanta to Greensboro. There are a lot of different roads, but I want the straight line, right?
yeah, yeah,
Find out what it's costing you not to take this seriously And I'm telling you, they're going to come to you with a better business to sell. They're going to be happier. They're going to feel confident that they're not leaving money on the table or losing it out the bottom of the bucket.
Right.
And it's going to be a much more glamorous business. And mama's going to be real happy because for the first time, a lot of these people are not waking up at 2 in the morning wondering, oh, did I handle that right? Or I got to give the CPA a call because we missed the kids on the payroll, or I've got to, how much do I need to put into my retirement plan? I don't use the word retirement, your work optional plan, but you get the idea. So that's the one thing I would do.
Phil, this has been a blast, man. Thank you so much for sharing your story. Congratulations on finding the hole in the marketplace and going a step further than what most people are willing to do to create value for the founders and entrepreneurs. To me, they're some of the most precious people in the world and they don't get treated very well.
No,
And you finding them and helping them bridge that gap, I think, is a beautiful blessing. Um, to our listeners, your dreams should be real. We'll catch you on the next episode.